All right. Hello, everybody. It's great to see you all again after so long. We're so excited to be able to bring our show again. So welcome to Midday Musing on Life and Leadership. I know our goal is to spread good news, to be able to empower, encourage, inform, and inspire people around the world. And I really want to thank you for all the support that you have been. I know we've gone through several topics and met many experts last year. And today we have another special person with us. My co-host, Pam, will be introducing him to us shortly. But I just want to say it is so great to see you all again.
Thanks, Rita. It is so wonderful to be able to be back. Otoma, let me just tell you a little bit about Otoma. He was born in Central Africa, and he moved to the United States when he was just a teenager. He served as a missionary in South Africa, and he's been on several mission teams. Currently, he lives in Detroit, Michigan, and he's with us today to give us insights on the topic of racial tensions. Welcome, Otoma.
Thank you.
Now, would you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you become a Christian? What are some lessons that you've learned in the ministry when you're out there? I'm sure in the United States and in Africa.
Yeah, so I became a Christian in 1994, July 31st. And I've always been someone who likes to kind of organize things. So at the time I had an internship at Ford Motor Company, and I used to organize all the interns, and we'd go to world headquarters. And so one of the guys that was there was Brian Perkins. And so he was kind of like by himself. I invited him over to join us for lunch that day. Little did I know that he would end up pulling me into the kingdom. I was just like, you know what, I want to go back to Africa someday. Fortunately, I had been at the World Missions Conference in 1995, and I was very inspired. So I was like, yes, I'm ready to go back. So as far as some of the lessons I was able to, glean from that time, you kind of hyped me up a little bit, but I was in 2 mission teams. So just want to bring that back down a little bit. But I was able to help with the church in Lesotho, the planting there in Southern Africa, and also the church in Malawi, which is where I was born. And I've always had a heart to want to go back to help the people there. So some of the lessons include just the importance of family. Anyone that's been on a mission team, there's no way you can build a church unless you really build a strong family and just a great culture within the church. Another thing that I learned was just the importance of mission, which is obvious, but it's so evident even like now as I look back, how we were just so mission focused and mission oriented. And I think this is one of the things that when churches get more established, they can drift away from that if they're not careful. So, but I just feel very fortunate to have been in that environment where I really got grounded in this idea of really just going after the mission and that being my life. Another thing I got out of that time was just friendship. And then I met my wife, which was just an awesome experience to meet just an incredible, beautiful, spiritual woman. Who's South African and just got a great heart for people. And I guess I would say the very last lesson out of that is even a simple guy like myself can make a difference. So that's what I would share.
Thank you for sharing.
That's great. I love what you said, Otoma, friendship, mission, family. I think those are all such important things. This last year and a half has been an interesting time for all of us, I believe. All of us who are living things that we never imagined is happening, COVID-19 and the racial tensions, it has contributed to a very challenging year for many of us. How did these events impact you?
Yeah, so the 2 most challenging events right now have been COVID-19 and then the racial tension. So I'll talk about those briefly. So I think on the COVID-19 front, just starting with that one, it's been very tragic for us. I know in my family, we lost our stepmom in Africa. She had been sick for about 5 days. And then she went to the hospital to find out, what was wrong with her breathing. 5 days later, she passed away. And so she left behind, my 3 siblings, my two sisters, Angelina and Manka, and then my brother, Junior, who's named after my dad, Toto. So that was definitely a very hard time, just for us as a family. And then my brother-in-law from my sister's first marriage in Ohio also passed away. I think that probably what it revealed the whole time through COVID also revealed just some of the tension and I guess underlying fissures that are in our church. And I guess we'll get to this a little bit more, just about how even though we're no longer in the world, so to speak, we're disciples here in the United States, we still have a lot of influences from the world that are still pulling us. And we need to really, I think, continue to look at those to make sure they're not hindering us in our discipleship and just in our love for God. I do think that this issue of really telling the truth while maintaining unity is going to be probably one of the greatest challenges we're going to face, and I think it was exposed through COVID, where, in the age of just wanting to maintain unity, we didn't really say certain things, but I think there's still some underlying things that need to be addressed the right way, but still do need to be addressed. In reference to racial tension, which kind of goes along with that a little bit in terms of some of the underlying issues, I think it proved to me something I guess maybe I've thought for some time, that there's just a different way that perhaps some of us view things. It's just interesting that, we have just different ways of looking at things. And John 17 says we need to come together and be family. And there's just some ways I think we need to really start to look at that in a deeper way to really be what God has called us. So I think it was very sad. I think what also was sad was just how the media has become so, I don't know if the word's biased, partisan, maybe the better word is partisan, where it's become more of, putting one side against each other, but not really having it being done on a factual basis. I guess the biggest thing that I can share with all of this is the emphasis on the individual, like individualism, I think is really what's killing us. We've not taken like this community aspect to the level where I think God wants it to be from the Sermon on the Mount, where we're not just concerned about me and myself, like the American way of thinking, but I think God wants us to care more about community and the individual. And I think when we have that mindset, we can work through a lot of the issues, that are there. So those are the things I would share in brief.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Otoma. I am so sorry for your loss. That is hard, just to have family lost and then all the different tensions. I appreciate you bringing up the racial inequality, the economy, the crime safety, COVID, and just the whole, all these events causing so much of division. And I know it goes against Jesus's vision for unity. And, what are some of your insights on how the culture has seeped into the church and kind of eroding Jesus's vision for us for being family? Because you mentioned when you were on the mission team, the biggest lessons you've learned was building with family and focusing on the mission. And what I hear is all these distractions coming in and dividing us and taking us off course. So what do you have to say about that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think part of it has to do with, I think, how we read the Bible. So if we read the Bible and we think the Bible is all about me becoming a disciple and one day going to heaven, and it just boils down to that, I think we're reading the Bible incorrectly in a sense. That's true, but that's not the full gospel. Yeah. But I think the full gospel has to do with me really worshiping the King, which is Jesus. He's the center of the gospel. And I think secondly, from there would be understanding that we're members of his kingdom and we have work to do while we're still on earth here. So as far as how culture is perhaps not quite, has seeped into the church and really caused havoc, I think to me, it goes back to how we see one another. So like right now we have in the United States, the predominant race is white. This is just the facts of the reality as we see it. And I think what's happened is it's actually caused people who are not white to consider themselves lesser. This is a culture, this is how our culture has looked at things. Now, in the sight of God, everyone is equal. No one is in a higher position. No one is in a lower position. We're all equal. And I think when we're not careful, we can let that culture seep into the church, and we can have a church where, even though we may not intend it to be that way, our desire is for us to be family, as we talked about. But if we're not careful, if we're not, quote, allowing the scriptures to disciple us, we can also start looking at ourselves as either higher or lower, the same as the way the world does, not the way the Bible does. And I think this is one of the biggest things that I'm seeing. And that's kind of why I started my little YouTube channel, Image Bearers. And we can talk about that later, just about how we're all made in the image of God. And we're supposed to really love one another, regardless of race, creed, gender, whatever.
Right.
So.
Great. I love that phrase, made in the image of God. Just as you highlight the issues that's going on, or just the underlying things that we face, maybe some of us, we speak about it, some of us, we don't, but we feel a lot. And most of us probably, we don't even know how to tackle this. For some of us, it may be just that I have to take a baby step in understanding this. Sure. What are some practical ways we can overcome these struggles so that, we can probably work towards that unity that Jesus prayed for? I know that life is not perfect, and I know that perfection is only when we all go to heaven one day. And, and we are promised that there's going to be trouble on this earth. But what are some things that I can do that will help me in reaching that unity, or that kind of unity?
Yeah, so we're in America, so I'm addressing primarily the context of the United States, but I'm also half Nigerian. So in Nigerian, you have similar issues where you may have one tribe fighting against another tribe. So I think the same thing can apply, and perhaps a predominant tribe may look down on a lesser tribe, and it may switch when another's in power. So I think the same dynamic applies, but I think a lot of it starts with leadership. So if we're going to have really just some changes in how we go about things, I think it starts with leadership, really just having a conviction that we are all made in the image of God. Now that sounds so basic, like, are you telling me, brother, that, I believe that everyone has that conviction to a degree, but I think what needs to happen more so is to understand that we do have a predominant culture right now. So I think the first step is just recognizing that all cultures need to be represented in some form or fashion in the church. So that's, I think, the first thing. With that, I would say starting out is just listening. The first step, I think, is just listening to other people, their viewpoints, what causes them stress, these kinds of things. The second step would be learning, okay? Doing your own research. I think, especially here in the United States, and I'm sure the books are all over the place, Michael Burns has written some really good books that people can learn more about, these concepts. And he's written them in such a way that he's not like on any one side, which I don't think any one of us should be. Another thing with that, as far as listening, kind of going back to the first one real quick, is courageous conversations, just letting people talk. Sometimes, as you said, Rita, we just don't know. We may be taking baby steps and we're just learning. So, I know both of you mentioned before we started that you're in India and you were on the mission team, Pam, and obviously that's how you met Rita. And, I'm from Africa. I'm here in the United States, but if I want to learn about your culture and how times were for you when you're on the mission team, I should just sit and listen and just absorb, what you're sharing. I think after that, I would find practical ways to involve those who are from the less dominant group in leadership to make sure that the church has representation. So we should have African-American culture. We should strive to have Hispanic culture. We should strive to have, Asian culture. We should strive in some way. We can't do this every day. We can't do this with every service, but we should find ways through the year to incorporate all these different groups within the church to make sure they know they're loved, they're represented. This could come even through like International Day, having prayer times that are in different languages, having a chance to celebrate our culture, which is something very unique about our church. We have people from all over. and let's just really go through and celebrate. So those would be the main things that I would share. And I think now is the most important time for us to really focus on, especially the leadership aspect, because my understanding is in the next 5 years, over 200 ministers are going to be retiring. So if with so many leaders retiring, this is actually the perfect time to really evaluate and say, okay, who's qualified from these less dominant groups that we can also consider incorporating into the leadership of the church to make sure that we're not just multiracial, but that we're a multicultural church. So those are the things that I would share.
Thank you, Otoma. I really appreciate your practicals on moving from that multiracial to multicultural. And it just reminds me of this metaphor of sometimes I remember when I was seeing the world before I wore glasses, it was kind of fuzzy. And that's the analogy that came to mind when you were sharing about maybe the predominant culture might view things a certain way, or the minority culture might view things a certain way. And all of us kind of get an eye check, and some practicals would be listening and learning. And that makes us see things clearer and to build that unity that Jesus desired. So thank you for those practicals. Another thing that you are doing that I know you have a passion for is your YouTube channel called Image Bearers. Would you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Yeah, I started a YouTube channel about 3 years ago, and then with COVID, there's always a bright side, right? Challenges, but there's also a bright side too. Had a chance to start interviewing people just all over the world. And so that's kind of how the YouTube channel got started. But to me, Image Bearer just has a sweetness to me. It's like we're made in whose image? In God's image. So I think it gives us security, that we're made in his image. So it gives us that confidence. But I think it also gives us a responsibility that now there's something we're supposed to do with that image and reflect it on this world in a great way. And so some of the things that we have for the channel is, as I mentioned, obviously, different things as it relates to race. So I have topics on that, history, theology. And one of my big passions right now is just unpacking what the gospel actually means. So I've had some great guests on in that sense. I also started a family history where I try to chronicle our family of churches, some different things on purity. I know obviously COVID's been challenging for a lot of people. And then obviously for some inspiration. So basically it's a way to, connect with other people around the world, to build friendships. And I think similar to your channel, to kind of get the word out on, what I'm passionate about, which is trying to make a difference and trying to make the world, a better place. So I think definitely if you like to watch YouTube and you want to get some inspiration, you want to get some great education, definitely check out my channel. I think I'll try to send you guys a link. You can include it in the show notes. So please consider subscribing and checking it out.
Great. Yes, we will definitely put the link at the bottom so you can subscribe. But thank you so much, Otoma, for your time, a short and special time, for sharing about your passion and your life and just your willingness to make a difference, touch people, bring them information that they probably normally would not have access to. And I know that's what we strive for. And we have audience from around the world, and we want to inspire them to be able to have insights that will encourage their life. And we're doing this because it's part of our mission. So I really want to thank you, Otoma. Thank you, Pam, and also our audience. We're always so excited, to be able to bring this to you whenever we can. As you can see, we've taken a break, but we will definitely do it more often, I believe. So I would say at this time, we'll be signing off from Midday Musing as we thank our guest as well as look forward to our next time together.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye for now.